want to give you the full picture of who I am before I get into this. I am 34 years old. I live in Cincinnati, and I work as a facilities manager for a mid-sized commercial property company. My job is walking through buildings every single day and identifying things that should not be there. Structural issues, maintenance failures, evidence that a space is not operating the way it was designed to operate. I have been doing it for 9 years, and I am good at it in a specific and practiced way. I notice details that most people walk past without registering. I do not miss things. I do not jump to conclusions. I observe, I assess, and I act based on what the evidence actually tells me, not what I feel, what the evidence says. I want that professional context sitting clearly in your mind while I tell you what happened at that rental house on Watts Bar Lake in Rea County, Tennessee last July, because every part of what I am about to describe, I tested against every rational explanation I had available to me before I accepted what it actually was. My girlfriend and I booked the property in February, 4 nights on Watts Bar Lake for the July 4th long weekend. The listing was on a major vacation rental platform. 4.8 stars across 62 reviews, good photos, clean communication from the owner. The lockbox code worked exactly as the check-in instructions described. We arrived on a Wednesday afternoon around 4 in the afternoon with a full cooler, no agenda, and 4 days of zero obligations in front of us. The house was a single-story ranch with a screened porch running the full width of the back, facing the water. Typical short-term rental presentation. Worn furniture, mismatched kitchen stuff, a remote with no battery cover, but clean, functional, and comfortable. I did a standard walkthrough the moment we finished unloading. I do this at every property I stay at. It is a professional habit that I cannot turn off. Front door lock, back door lock, every ground floor window breaker panel location, water shut-off valve, smoke detector placement. I went through the whole house in about 8 minutes. Everything was where it was supposed to be. Everything looked normal. The first full day was exactly what we came for. We kayaked in the morning, we sat on the back porch in the afternoon and ate and read, watching boats move across the lake in the heat. The evening was warm and still, the fireflies were working over the water, and it was genuinely one of the better evenings I can remember from last summer. We went to bed around 11, the ceiling fan was on, the window AC was running. I fell asleep faster than I usually do in a new place. Sometime after 2 in the morning, I woke up. My girlfriend was asleep beside me. I lay still and tried to identify what had pulled me out of sleep. The room was dark, the fan was still turning, the AC was still running. Then I heard it from the direction of the back hallway, a drawer opening and closing. One drawer, the specific mechanical sound of a slider being pulled out fully and pushed back in, not a thump or a bang. The precise, controlled sound of a drawer being used by someone who knew where they were going and what they were reaching for. I lay still and ran through the house layout in my head. The back hallway had the bathroom on the left and the laundry room at the end. The laundry room had a washer, a dryer, and a utility cabinet on the far wall that I had opened during my walkthrough. Cleaning supplies and spare trash bags inside. I tried to remember if there were drawers in that cabinet on the far wall that I had opened during my walkthrough. Cleaning supplies and spare trash bags inside. I was not certain. Old utility cabinets sometimes have built-in drawers behind panels. I decided it was possible and I got up to check. I went to the hallway. I listened before I opened the laundry room door. Nothing. I opened it. Washer, dryer, utility cabinet. I opened the cabinet. Cleaning supplies, trash bags. No drawers anywhere in that room. No drawers anywhere accessible in that section of the hallway. I went back to bed and told myself I had misidentified a sound while half asleep. It was a reasonable explanation, and I held on to it. The next morning, my girlfriend came out of the bedroom before me. When I walked into the kitchen, she was standing at the island, looking at the right side drawer. She asked if I had been in there during the night. I said no. She said the drawer was open when she came out, not ransacked, not disturbed in any way. Just sitting open, the way a drawer sits when someone used it and walked away without pushing it closed. I told her about the sound I had heard. She did not say much, but she did not look reassured. I checked the drawer contents against my mental inventory from the day before. Her chapstick, my phone charging cable, a bottle opener we had found in a kitchen cabinet and moved. Nothing was missing. Nothing had been moved inside the drawer. It had just been opened and left that way. I checked the back door. Locked. Every ground floor window, all latched from the inside. I checked the door between the garage and the kitchen. Locked. We spent that day on the water. I kept the information from the previous night in the back of my head and added nothing to it during daylight. Nothing happened. The house was quiet all day. That night, around midnight, I was awake on the screen porch reading on my phone. My girlfriend had gone to sleep an hour before. The lake was dark and flat. The frogs were loud. The air smelled like warm water and cut grass from somewhere up the bank. I heard the interior sliding glass door move behind me, not open. The specific low vibration of the handle being tested from the inside. The particular rattle a sliding door makes when someone grips the handle and applies lateral pressure without fully disengaging the latch. I turned around immediately. The door was closed. The interior of the house behind the glass was dark. I could see my own reflection in the glass, and nothing behind it that I could resolve into a shape. I went inside and did a full room-by-room walkthrough with my phone flashlight. Kitchen, living room, hallway, both bedrooms, both bathrooms, every closet, including the one in the master bedroom that I pulled every hanging item aside to check behind. The laundry room, under both beds, nothing. Every external door and window still locked and latched from the inside, then lined. Every external door and window still locked from light from infinity, and I looked up at the hallway ceiling. The attic access panel was there, the way those painted over square panels are in a lot of single-story ranch builds. Standard drywall panel in a frame, painted the same color as the ceiling, easy to ignore. I had noted it during my initial walkthrough and thought nothing of it. I reached up and pushed on it with my palm. It moved immediately. It lifted and slid to the side freely, without resistance. It had not been sealed with paint the way an undisturbed panel would be. The edges were clean. It had been opened before recently. I did not have a ladder. The gap I had created was about 12 inches. I stood underneath it and angled my phone flashlight up into the opening. I could see the underside of the roof decking and the edge of a plywood walking board running away from the opening into the dark. I could not see how far it went. I listened. Nothing came from above. I texted the property owner through the platform at 1 in the morning. I described the drawer, the door handle, vibration, and the attic panel condition. I said I was not comfortable continuing the stay without a physical check of the property. He replied in 9 minutes. He said he was in Nashville and would send his property manager first thing in the morning. She arrived at 8:15 with a folding step stool from her truck. She was professional and businesslike, giving me the impression she had handled guest complaints before. I walked her through everything. She listened, took notes on her phone, and went to the attic panel without hesitation. She was up there for about 2 minutes. When she came back down, her face had a completely different quality than it had when she went up. She said the attic had a plywood walking board running its full length. She said at the far end of the board, positioned directly above the master bedroom where we had been sleeping, there was a padded, moving blanket, the thick kind that furniture movers use, folded into a flat rectangle the size of a sleeping area. On top of it was a plastic water bottle, half empty, with no label, and next to the water bottle, half empty, with no label, and next to the water bottle, a small manual can opener. She called the owner immediately from the hallway. He said he had no explanation for those items. He said no one had any reason to be in that attic. We checked out within the hour. The platform issued a full refund. The owner said he was filing a report with the Rhea County Sheriff's Office. He stopped responding to my follow-up messages after the first week. I have thought about the 62 reviews on that listing many times since then. 4.8 stars. 62 separate groups of people who had stayed in that house, checked out, gone home, and left their star ratings and written comments about the lovely lake views and the well-equipped kitchen. And not one of them had looked up at the attic panel. Not one of them had heard something and gone looking for what was making it. Or maybe some of them had heard something and gone looking for what was making it. Or maybe some of them had. Maybe some of those 62 reviewers had heard a drawer close at 2 in the morning, decided they had imagined it, and gone back to sleep. I will never know, but someone had been up there, above our bed with a water bottle, a can opener, and a folded blanket. While we slept, while we were on the lake, while I was sitting on the porch at midnight in the dark, listening to frogs. They were up there, patient, quiet, and 11 inches above our heads. I need to establish who I am before I tell you this. I am 31 years old, and I have been taking solo or paired road trips every summer since I was 22. 9 summers, serious distance driving. I have run the Pacific Coast Highway from top to bottom. I have done the full Route 66 alignment from Chicago to Santa Monica. I drove Death Valley in August on purpose because I wanted to know what it felt like. I understand long-haul driving in a way that a casual driver does not. I know the specific warning signs of road fatigue. I know what highway hypnosis feels like and how it builds across hours. I know the visual distortions that long, flat desert roads produce when the heat is high and you have been behind the wheel for 3 hours without a break. I know all of those things from personal experience, and I know how to manage them. I pull over. I eat something. I walk around the car twice. I get back in refreshed. I do not miss exits. I do not lose track of time. My travel partner of 2 previous summer trips will confirm that I track arrival times against estimates and have been within 15 minutes on every single one. That is who I am. I want that established clearly before I tell you what happened on US Route 70 in eastern Arizona in June of last year. We were 2 weeks into a 3-week trip west from Albuquerque, heading ultimately to San Diego. My travel partner was solid and experienced and had been with me on enough road trips that we had a comfortable rhythm. We were driving Route 70 through the high desert on a Tuesday morning in June, planning to cut south toward Tucson before swinging west toward the coast. The road out there is 2 lanes, flat, and runs through scrub desert with mountain ranges on the distant horizon that look the same distance away for hours. The sky was pale blue and completely open, and the temperature was already climbing toward 90 by 10 in the morning. At around 11, we saw the sign. It was a sheet of 4x8 plywood propped at the road shoulder, hand-painted white with dark blue lettering. It said, P.O.N.E. Ear Museum, Open, Longley, Largest Collection in the Region. I looked at Soen in the region. I looked it up on my phone while she drove the approach. Nothing. No Google Maps listing. No weld type page. No GRI Beislentry. I looked at Eekfartent. No mention anywhere on any platform. That is not unusual for very small regional operations in that part of Arizona. Family museums in rural desert counties often run entirely on roadside signage and have never been digitized. We have stopped at places like that before, and they have been some of the best stops on any trip. Real stuff. Donated artifacts, handwritten labels on index cards, genuine regional history that you cannot find online because no one has ever bothered to put it there. We decided to turn off. The access road was packed dirt, 1 lane wide, running straight from the highway shoulder into the desert. About a mile in, it opened onto a gravel lot in front of a long, low concrete block building painted tan with a flat roof. 2 windows flanked a front door. The sign above the door matched the highway sign. A smaller card taped inside the glass said 80 emission 3 and open. 1 other vehicle was in the lot. An older tan Chevrolet pickup, extended cab sitting in the far corner. The tires had visible flat spots from extended standing. The truck had not moved in some time. We went in. The interior was a single long room with fluorescent tube lights overhead, roughly half of them functioning. Display cases lined both walls and a row of freestanding cases ran down the center. Old photographs mounted behind glass. Pioneer tools on pegboard. Samples of early barbed wire mounted on boards with handwritten identification labels. Fragments of painted pottery behind locked cases. A full working saddle on a wooden stand in the far corner. The particular smell of old paper and metal and dust that accumulates in a building that has been collecting things for decades without climate control. A man sat at a small desk near the entrance, mid-70s, canvas shirt, jeans. He looked up when we came in and said, "Welcome." He asked if we had driven far. I said we were coming from Albuquerque heading west. He nodded and said that was a good drive. He did not get up. We paid the $3 admission each. He put the bills in a small wooden box on the desk and looked back down at whatever he had in front of him. I started on the left wall. The photographs were genuinely interesting. Pioneer families in front of adobe construction. Cattle drives across open grassland. Cattle drives across open grassland. A sequential documentation of one specific cattle operation covering roughly 50 years of photographs from the 1890s, 30s to the 1940s. I was reading every handwritten label carefully. My travel partner was working through the center cases. I cannot tell you exactly when it changed. That is the most important part, and also the hardest part to explain clearly. At some point, I became aware that I had been looking at a specific photograph for a while. A framed image of 3 women standing in front of a stone well. I was not reading the label. I was not forming a thought about the image. I was simply standing in front of it. When I became aware of this, the experience was physical. It felt like surfacing, not from sleep and not from a daydream, from something with more weight and density than either of those things. Like coming up from underwater, slowly. I looked around the room. My travel partner was at the far end of the center cases. I walked to her. I asked how long we had been inside. She looked at me. The expression on her face was the expression of someone who had just had the same experience I had and had not yet named it. She said she did not know. She said she did not know. She said it felt like maybe 20 minutes. She said she'd been looking at a case of antique keys, and then she was just looking at them. And then I was standing next to her with no clear sense of the interval between those two moments. I checked my phone. We had been inside that building for 2 hours and 11 minutes. I stood in the center of that room and I tested every explanation I had. Road fatigue does not produce a 2-hour gap with no continuous memory in two separate people simultaneously. We had both slept adequately the previous night at a motel in Socorro. We had eaten breakfast. Neither of us takes any medication that affects cognition or time perception. I know what highway hypnosis feels like, and it does not produce this. Highway hypnosis is a dissociative response to repetitive visual input during active driving. We had been standing still in a room looking at display cases. The conditions for highway hypnosis were not present. I considered whether carbon monoxide from a faulty heating system could affect two people simultaneously in a way that produced disorientation, without producing headache or nausea. We had no headache, no nausea, no physical symptoms of any kind. We both felt completely normal, just empty of the previous 2 hours. I looked at the man at the desk. He had not moved that I could tell. Same posture, same angle of the head toward whatever was in front of him. I walked to the entrance and asked him what time he closed. He looked up and said 4 o'clock. He said we had plenty of time. He closed. He looked up and said 4 o'clock. He said we had plenty of time. I told my travel partner we were leaving. She did not argue. We walked out into the lot and got in the car. The tan pickup was still in its corner. The flat spots on its tires looked exactly as they had when we arrived. I started the engine and checked the dashboard clock against my phone. Both confirmed the same thing. 2 hours and 11 minutes. I spent the drive to Tucson trying to find the museum online with every search variation I could construct. County name, road name, general location description, museum name, in combination with Arizona. I found one reference, a digitized 1987 Arizona Highway Guide listing a pioneer museum along that stretch of Route 70, noted as a regional collection operated by a private family. Status listed as closed 1991 following the death of the founding family member. That night at our motel in Tucson, I opened my road trip journal. I keep one on every trip and I record every stop with time in and time out because I track our mileage and timing against our planned route. The entry for that stop reads, Pioneer Museum, Route 70. Time in, 11:04 a.m. The timeout field is blank. I do not remember writing the time in. I found it filled in when I opened the journal. The handwriting is mine. I have no explanation that covers all of it. Not one that covers the 2-hour gap, the simultaneous experience in two separate people, the closed museum that matched the location and description exactly, the journal entry I do not remember making, and the man at the desk who did not move and told us we had plenty of time. I still take a summer road trip every year. I still drive through that part of Arizona. I have not taken Route 70 again. I take I-10 now. It adds about 40 minutes to the drive time. I have decided 40 minutes is worth it. I need to establish my background clearly before I tell you this, because the background matters. I am 40 years old, and I grew up in Brunswick, Georgia. Coastal Georgia. My family has been on the water in the marshes of that coastal region for 3 generations. My grandfather ran a boat out of Brunswick Harbor for 30 years. My father taught me to navigate the intracoastal waterway before I was old enough to drive a car. I ran my grandfather's 17-foot center console on my own for the first time when I was 14, and by 16 I knew those channels well enough to navigate them at night by memory without hesitation. I know coastal Georgia waters the way some people know their own neighborhood. I know what lives in them. I know what moves through them, and what that movement looks like from a vessel. I know the difference between a dolphin running with a boat, a large ray pushing through a shallow channel, a manatee at the surface, and a fish wake in current. I have seen all of those things hundreds of times on those waters. I am not someone who misidentifies what he sees in an environment he has spent his entire life in. That matters. Keep it in mind. Me and my younger brother do this trip every August. 4 nights on Cumberland Island. We have done it for 11 years. We trailer the boat from Brunswick, launch at the St. Mary's public ramp, run out to the island, and stay on the North Beach. Cumberland Island is a national seashore. Most of it is accessible only by ferry or private vessel. The north end is undeveloped and remote. No services, no cell signal on the beach. Wild horses on the dunes at dusk. The nearest other person is typically a mile away in any direction. We know exactly where to anchor, where to set up camp, and where the fish hold in the channels on the western side of the island. We have been running this specific trip for 11 years, and we know every foot of it. The first 4 days last August were standard. Good fishing, good weather, the particular quiet that comes from being somewhere without a signal for an extended stretch. On the final night, we did our traditional channel run. We do this every year on the last night. Fish hold well in August in the channels between the western side of Cumberland and the mainland marsh. The tide was running right, and we knew the water, and we left camp at 9:30 with the gear set up, the chart plotter on, and the navigation lights lit. The channel that runs along the western side of Cumberland is wide in some sections and tight in others. At night it goes dim, and the marsh grass on both banks catches whatever moonlight is available and lays flat silver lines across the water. We were running at idle roughly 4 knots, working north from our starting point, which is a slightly deeper section of the channel where the fish stack when the water is moving. About 20 minutes in, I saw something off the port side, movement at the surface, parallel to the boat, running at our exact speed, about 30 feet off the port beam. Consistent and low, not a wake pattern. A sustained, forward-moving displacement at the waterline, the kind of displacement produced by a large body moving just beneath the surface and pushing water ahead of it. My first assessment was dolphin. Bottlenose dolphins work those channels regularly. They come in to feed and they run with boats. It is a common encounter in that area, and it is one of the better parts of being on the water in coastal Georgia. I watched the displacement for about 15 seconds before I said anything to my brother. I was waiting for the surface break. A dolphin at our speed in 30 feet of water with that displacement profile would surface within 45 seconds to breathe. They cannot go longer than that submerged at that activity level. I watched for 90 seconds submerged at that activity level. I watched for 90 seconds. No surface break, no exhale, no fin. The displacement continued, unbroken, at our exact speed. I told my brother to turn off the engine for a moment. He stopped the motor. The boat settled, and the channel went quiet around us. The displacement off the port side stopped the instant the engine stopped. Completely. I looked at the water 30 feet off the beam. Flat, moonlit, still. No residual movement. No trailing wake. No shape visible below the surface. Nothing. I told him to start the engine again slowly. He started it up and brought it to idle speed over about 15 seconds. By the time we were back at 4 knots, the movement was there again. 30 feet off our side, moving at our speed, perfectly matched. I went through every option I knew. I have watched marine animals move at the surface in those waters. They are slow, and their movement is broad and visible, and they come up to breathe at regular intervals. What was near us was moving at 4 knots and had not surfaced in over 4 minutes. I thought about current effects. The tide that night was moving south. We were moving north. A current would move in the opposite direction. It would not maintain a fixed distance from the boat through steering adjustments. It would not respond when the engine stopped. Current does not behave that way. My brother pointed his flashlight at the water. Full light 30 feet out. The surface lit up and the water was clear, and there was nothing visible in the light. The movement was still present at the edge of the light, but nothing was in the water to explain it. We stayed in the channel and kept moving north for another 20 minutes. It stayed in the channel and kept moving north for another 20 minutes. It stayed with us the entire time. Every curve I made, it adjusted to. When the channel narrowed and I steered left, it tracked us without delay. My brother mentioned softly that he wanted to return to camp. I agreed and turned the boat around. I increased our speed heading south. It kept pace with us, 30 feet off our side, unbroken for the full return run. When I turned east toward the beach, the movement did not follow. It continued south in the channel and was gone within 30 seconds. We pulled the boat up on the beach and did not go back in the water. We sat by the camp and talked through every explanation we could think of. 2 people who have spent their whole lives on that water, who know every animal and current pattern. We could not find a single logical answer. I went back to that island this past August. My brother did not come. On the last night of my trip, I stayed on the beach. I did not take the boat into the water. I sat on the beach and looked out and went to sleep early. I have been on those waters my whole life. I have never missed that night run until this past August. I do not have a name for what was moving with us. And until I know what it was, I do not know how to go back out there in the darkness and not think about it, matching every move I make.